Major and I are in the same room, but we somehow don't want to be on the same video.
We can.
Cool. We got a pretty big crowd gathered so far today. If you guys are having problems hearing, we can put in. Well, I don't know if I'll put in headphones, so we'll just have to speak up. Does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Sound great.
All right. All right, Tyler. I actually am going to defer to you because you volunteered to create a mini agenda. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but the agenda might help keep us on track. And you're muted.
So I think we should start out talking about just introducing ourselves. We have some new people on the call today. I'll start. My name is Tyler Wang. I'm on our support and operations team. If you've ever emailed in support at SmartThings, you've probably talked with me at some point. But I also kind of run around in the background here, making sure that we are the operating company. I have a friend here next to me. Here, this is Doug. You want to go from there?
Yeah, I've been on this call a long time ago. I'm coming back in just to mess up Ben's life. I work on the bottom side, firmware and devices.
He's being pretty modest. He basically does everything Zigbee plus most hub things and hub v2. So there you go.
Cool. You want to go from there, Ben?
Yeah, well, I have your agenda in front of me. It looks like employee introduction. Is that what we just did?
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now. So you want to introduce yourself and major and kick it around?
Yeah, we don't do that often. I feel like because we've got our names under us. But yeah, I'm Ben. I try to gather what I can from the community when I'm not scheduling and planning events. This is Major here.
Hey, what's up? Major, developer evangelist, working with the developer community.
There's probably a few other
Oh, it's back.
All right. Well, they might be being shy or just unable to use audio right now.
Yeah, this is Bob Florian. Everything froze as soon as I clicked my microphone unmute. I don't know if I did that or not, but I'm one of the VP of engineering for software, smart app development and platform.
Yeah.
Joining us here in Palo Alto, we have Donald. Donald, do you want to give a little brief introduction?
Introductions. Yeah, I run the device lab. I just started about a month and a half ago.
Testing all the various devices that we get integrations for and whatnot. Great. Well, I see you strategically positioned yourself, Tyler, next to Doug so that he can jump right into some V2 hub discussion. Maybe by way of introduction, maybe talk a little bit about the announcements that we made about Hub v2, Doug, and then we've got time for questions, obviously, about Hub v2. I expect a few of those.
So you're saying I can talk about Hub v2? It's beautiful. It's white with a gray bottom. It's got holes in it as demoed before. Takes some batteries, like really, really amazing. So it has like offline functionality where if it loses power, it will.
Hold that there, Tyler. Keep it up, and then show the bottom how it snaps on and whatnot.
So we have the sliding plastic piece here. Let's see if I can do it correctly. So it fits in slightly off center, and then it snaps in here, just like that. So it takes 4 AA's, and how long are we expecting that backup battery to last? A couple hours, though, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear him.
I actually don't know off the top of my head right now. We could find out what he expects for time.
A couple hours, though, is our expectation.
Right. And yeah, it's got the same stuff as I got on with the addition
We can't hear Doug. We can hear Tyler talk just fine, but not Doug.
Really? What about now? No?
I think he's got selective hearing.
Have you tuned my voice out from years of heckling, or what's going on here?
I can't hear Ben now. Is anyone else able to hear us? I feel like we might be having network issues.
We can hear you. So it's just when you have a much better place to the microphone than Doug does.
Okay.
So it's not a Mac. He's using this weird Acer computer. So whatever.
Well, let me speak for him. So there's a panel here that actually slides out and fits 4 AA batteries. We're expecting a couple hours worth of backup time there in the batteries. On the back, for anybody who missed it earlier, there's a barrel jack power connector, 2 USB ports for expandability. Our immediate expectation is that you'll have the ability to plug in a USB cellular modem in the back. And then the Ethernet port, of course. There's no Wi-Fi, but there is an addition of a Bluetooth low energy chip. I think that's called, the proprietary standard is Bluetooth Smart. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's about the same size as our existing hub. Maybe a little bit closer to the form factor of an Apple TV, but plastic. You can see the comparison here.
It looked like there were some questions about wall mountability. I would imagine we could create different backs that could slide on, or open source the CAD drawings for it so that the wall mount could be created. We currently don't have a wall mount system in there. That might be something to look at. There's also a question about Wi-Fi USB adapter. Basically, what that means. But I mean, it's like a cellular. Well, Patrick. Oh, power over Ethernet is another question. These are all questions. Yeah, coming in hot and heavy.
I'll take this up. So it doesn't have power over Ethernet. Mostly the justification is the cost for supporting power over Ethernet is higher than what it is to support just a regular connector, and having equipment that is PoE or power over Ethernet is typically a higher barrier to entry for most people's home systems. So it's just a conscious price choice. The Wi-Fi radio we can do. I imagine, USB Wi-Fi radio is possible. I think we would probably approach it as finding specific ones that work better than others and maybe have a recommended list, and being able to push a config from your phone or from the cloud to say use the Wi-Fi versus use Ethernet.
What about the ability for an external antenna?
What type of antenna?
Ideally Zigbee.
Right now the antenna is a different design than our V1. I would think that if you wanted to extend the radio or capabilities of Zigbee, you would maybe have another hub, and it could connect as a slave device. And we're talking about possibilities of having our V1 hub just be a communication slave and having it connect to this hub. Alternatively, you can have multi-locations or multi-hubs on a location, which gets a little more complicated than we probably want to go into
right now, but we're looking at it as far as migration path for V1 to V2.
Okay. So putting it in a rack, not an ideal scenario right now.
Surrounded by metal or anything like Faraday cagey is going to be a little bit problematic. But the same thing you would consider for your Wi-Fi is probably similar for what you should do with the Hub V2.
Okay.
Your Wi-Fi router.
Trying to get to some of these questions as they come in. One was about rechargeable batteries. I do not believe that it's set up to recharge rechargeable batteries if you have it plugged in. And so those batteries will just be off until power is cut.
And the other thing with the rechargeable batteries is typically... Grab this again. Can you hear me better again?
Yeah.
Rechargeable batteries usually operate at a lower voltage than regular alkaline batteries, so they will appear to be less full all of the time, even when they're fully charged. Just as a heads up, so you might think that you have a full charge, but it's going to be like 75% or somewhere around that for the rechargeable batteries, just because the voltage is lower. so it will appear to be less. Right. Yeah, you can put rechargeable batteries in it, but it's not going to keep them charged while it's plugged into power.
Statement again.
How about? Oh, I can't hear Donald.
Oh, 1 second, Don. I'm gonna move my phone here. Just to jump back to the power over Ethernet statement. While it may not be directly supported, you could certainly, if you've got the equipment to provide enough voltage, get a jig to feed into the system's power. So,
Okay.
theoretically.
What was the impetus to change for the barrel plug versus the USB? Was it simply the USB they would be broken, or what was that?
The reason for changing is because it's a 2 amp requirement for power on the Hub V2, and the fact that a lot of people have been plugging their things into their computers and other generic USB wall warts that are just way too small. So the idea was to make supports barrier a lot lower by making a connector that they wouldn't have necessarily laying around their house and assume that is a good connection. There's also support tickets where people were assuming that micro USB connector was something that they could plug something into and think it was going to do something even though it was only for power.
All right.
Specifically with plugging in their hub into, say, a USB connector on the back of their Wi-Fi router, and that not supplying enough power to the hub. So not that it was the main cause to switch, but it's certainly a consideration as we looked to a different power connector.
How about USB? Is it USB 3?
That's USB 2, which
right.
USB 3 will fall back to if you have USB 3 devices, unless it strictly requires some of the things in USB 3.
I do also have our new micro multi-sensor here. This is our existing SmartSense open closed sensor. It's about 1/3 of the size. You can see that here.
Wait, I'd say 2/3 the size.
So this has the mount on the back.
1/3 smaller, I would say.
Okay.
I know that there's been some talk out there about them being 1/3 the size, but you can clearly see that's about 1/3 smaller.
I can get the back off here.
But it's back. The important. Oh yeah, it's the important part is it's back to the multi again, versus just the single open close sensor.
When are those going to be available?
April is the plan. And I have a question for Doug about them, since I don't get to see Doug all the time. How about so I know that these radios aren't like super powered, right? Like our old devices, the Zigbee chips were powered up a little bit.
The new devices aren't amplified. So the old devices, the bigger ones that he just showed, those are amplified for transmit, so they can transmit stronger, but the receive would be the same. So it was kind of a trade-off on size with the battery, and the fact that it is a little more confusing when it can transmit louder and can't receive. So like the signal metrics that we're getting were not necessarily indicative of good communication for like how loud it was transmitting. So these are going to be less distance potentially than what the bigger ones are. So it's a non-amplified module in the smaller ones. So the trade-off, I don't know what the plan is. Maybe Ben knows this better, if we're going to continue to have the larger size ones and the smaller size ones, or if we're going to stick with the smaller size ones ubiquitously.
From what I've heard, we won't be selling both simultaneously, but I have to confirm that. And this is a good point to bring up. One thing I wanted to mention at the outset here is Alex has offered to join us on a developer call coming up. He was going to try to make this call, but he couldn't get it to work. So he's offered to either do another call next Wednesday and fit that in, or come to our regularly scheduled one in 2 weeks. He and maybe Jeff, our CTO, could be on and sort of give a larger roadmap sort of discussion. But I wanted to just mention that, there are still unanswered questions even on our side about, when something might be available, what all the details will be, specifically around premium services and things like that. And so in most cases, when when we're not giving additional information, it's not because we're hoarding the information. It's because we are still developing the plan. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think there's a few good reasons why we don't want to amplify those chips any longer. One is I think we weren't really seeing people have their Zigbee devices way out of range, with the possible exception of the presence tag, which was not amplified by anyways, I don't believe. Maybe it was. And correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but we can then sell these Zigbee devices as is in Europe because they're not amplified, or is that not right? Can't hear you.
The non-amplified modules meet the global requirements, where the amplified modules were a US specific power setting.
Okay. All right. So now is the time when there's more V2 Hub question and answering, if anyone has questions that I've missed. Or
I've got questions.
Yeah.
Let's talk about local support.
All right, great.
Well, you do need support for local smart apps and executing things.
How about just full TCP/IP stack? Can I talk to my local devices and get responses that aren't HTML formatted?
I think you mean HTTP formatted right now. We support beyond HTML. But that's actually a cloud thing on our side and isn't specifically related to Hub V1, V2 type of a conversation. So we can add that and have support across all of our current hub and the Hub V2. It's just not something that's been prioritized yet in our cloud development map.
All right. How about
I'm not sure. What's that?
How about UDP support? Sending a UDP command.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. It's supported in the guts of the hub across the board for Hub V2 and Hub V1. We just need to add support to the cloud to add it. So
the contradictory information I've been provided over the last 6 months. That's hysterical.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the old versions don't have UDP.
Okay.
But the current firmware does, and it's the same firmware like base as what's on Hub V2 to start with.
All right. So in my particular instance, to communicate with another home automation system, I need to download a very large 8 megabyte project file. Any type of local storage?
That's actually something we haven't talked about currently, but it's something like we could do a USB thumb drive potentially, just like brainstorming on the fly here. You could do a thumb drive and possibly chuck it in the thumb drive versus using the same system memory that's used for our main tasks. I don't know that that's actually going to happen, but if it is something that's of interest, it's something that we could actually spec out and see if it's makes feasible sense for a company vision.
There's a couple related questions that I just wanted to pose from people typing in. How much RAM is included for local support? Was one.
So is that for just random things to run? Because I guess that's kind of an arbitrary question. So some of the stuff is for local execution, it's going to use whatever it can fit, and then more smart apps won't be pushed down. So I don't know if you guys have talked about this whole local execution path on calls before. So right now, I mean, it's got 512 megs of RAM in it, so we can run all the way up to that. But that number really means not a lot specifically to an app developer. It's probably going to translate to how big of things you want to store in RAM, and then that will determine how many more smart apps or app device types that you can fit to run locally.
What about accessing the hub directly versus the cloud? So how is the offline, non-connected, cached mode, whatever you want to call it, going to work?
How does it work if you wanted to access that type of a scenario with your own hardware? Or
let's say I wanted to have my other home automation software query just the local hub for status. I don't want to round trip every 5 seconds to know whether or not a light switch is on or off.
So you want like a local API on your LAN potentially to be able to query some information from the hub?
Absolutely.
So I think, is that available right now on our OAuth flow, Ben? Do you know if that's a thing that we're providing to developers? Because the actual cache info would come back straight from the hub instead of going all the way back to the cloud because it would be locally stored. If you're getting it round trip right now, it would just be the shorter trip hub back.
And it would be instantaneous. I don't have to worry about an internet connection.
Right. And it would be available potentially if your internet connection was down, but your LAN was still up.
So you're saying that that is a cached element currently today on V1, just may not be exposed?
No. None of the events and statuses are cached in V1 Hub. But the idea with all of the local processing is that you could push down things that happen locally in your hub, like any of the smart apps or device types that are all local, and have them happen either prioritized by the idea of if your power is out, you'd probably want those ones to happen locally, or speed is a type of a scenario. So you would have all those run locally, and anything that doesn't fit into that memory space could run in the cloud still. And all the events, everything else will look the same as if it was running in the cloud from your mobile interface or smart apps. So like write a smart app once, write a device type once, could run locally, could run in the cloud, but it should look identical other than round trip time and interfacing.
Right, but I think the question is, as far as API access, I haven't heard that discussed one way or the other, whether we would provide something equivalent to the current OAuth-based access directly to the hub from another device in your LAN. I don't know if you know that or not, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be offered or not.
The caching being something we pass down to the LAN interface for OAuth? That's what you're saying, Bob?
What I'm saying is being able to make in other words, have a smart app on the hub, be able to query it from the hub's IP. I don't know if there's been any discussion of that or not. If you created a smart app that exposed endpoints as you would now to be able to query device states from the cloud, whether we're going to allow you to call the hub directly. That's something we could, unless you know that one way or the other, it's something.
No, I think maybe you might be thinking of it in a different way than I was. But yeah, that's probably, I think that's right. Because we're not going to allow you to run something that puts a whole different interface on the local hub. It would just be cache info. You there, Bob? I don't know. Is that okay?
Yeah, so you would be able to query the local hub for all of the states of the devices?
I think if it's one of the smart, like we're not going to be running the things that Core API has access on the local hub, but if you had a smart app that was a LAN type device, you could provide it locally on the hub. So I don't know if that's what Patrick was asking, or which of the two scenarios.
Well, I guess it just comes down to, configuration path. There's the nicety of being able to say, I only want these devices exposing their information via smart app on the local hub versus a query where I specify a device ID or all devices return a status and not have to have that round trip through the internet and just be able to get that. So if I want to know if a light's on or I want to subscribe to an event locally, it shouldn't have to route all the way to the internet and back.
Well, that's definitely true. You can have a smart app. It will be running locally on the hub. It can subscribe to events from devices that are running locally on the hub, and that information won't be round trip. So if you walk into a room and the motion sensor turns on a light, that whole path is local in the hub.
Right. But no, what I'm saying is then I want another device, a computer, another system to be able to call or query the local hub for the status of that light, not have to query the internet side of it.
Right, another client, another computer querying for the status of those devices. I don't know if that's being supported or not. Unless you do, Doug. I'm not sure.
No, I don't know anything about that. I haven't heard anything more on that either as of yet.
I think we'd take that as an action item to address at a subsequent meeting.
I mean, one main thing to understand is that like SmartThings and many of its customers out there want to run as much locally as possible. We want these things to be happening locally, both for reduced latency, but also reduced burden on cloud infrastructure. To be frank, and so we want to send only the things that need to go to the cloud whenever possible. Both Mike and Jason are asking questions in the chat about how things get determined, which device /app smart apps get kicked off if RAM is exhausted, or if you have a high priority smart app like a smoke alarm, does it boot out other things? And so just how much of that logic have we thought through, or do we think we need to think through before we launch in April?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. A lot of that hasn't been ironed out on prioritizing each of the smart apps against each other, but it is something that's definitely on our minds before launch date. I imagine kicking events off of App Engine and having them run back in the cloud is probably something that will come to some sort of a priority. If you have another one that fits, if you remove a low priority app, maybe we kick one off, but it'll be something that we'll have to actually spend some time on thought on to figure out what makes the most sense for customers. Right. Yeah, I don't want to tell my mom that something's not running locally when it's like an actual high priority type thing. Like she probably doesn't care if the lights turn on when the door opens, but she maybe really cares if, I don't know, like it turns off a water valve when there's water in the basement.
All right. We have gone past the time for talking about this, but we can still continue if we want. The next item on the agenda, if people are interested, is the SmartThings premium service, specifically the DVR component of that, the streaming video and video recording. I don't know who is lined up to talk about that right now. I've said about as much as I know.
We didn't line up specific people to talk about it. I think that Bob has had the most experience with that. Bob, do you feel comfortable giving a little description of how the DVR camera integration is supposed to work with our premium service?
Wow, I was hoping someone else would be on the call to talk about that. Yeah, I don't. We're looking at offering. We have. In fact, we demoed at CES some prototypes that include streaming from the camera, recording of clips. The premium offering, there'll be different levels to support different amounts of recording time. I don't really have a lot of details or answers about specifics about what kinds of protocols or access we're going to have there. Unfortunately, I have to. Unless someone else on the call wants to chime in, I think that's something else we'll have to
generally
address later.
describe the functionality. It's the ability to begin recording when an event happens and send you that recording as a notification, and then the ability to manage those recordings in app, basically as a DVR service with some intelligent analytics as far as what's happening on a timeline. Is that fair to say, Bob?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement.
Yeah, and so part of Hub 2 is increased processing power so that we can manage streaming video, not just from one camera, but from multiple cameras, and feed that cloud side so that you can access that from anywhere.
Will it require a trip to the internet to get that video? I guess that's a question Patrick is asking.
So we've been talking about doing local access. If your mobile phone was in your local LAN, being able to see it locally. But I don't know if anything's been nailed down by this point at all. So like that feature set is something we probably need to iron out. And I imagine will be more available as we step through that process more.
Will this DVR service be requiring the camera to be internet exposed then?
Exposed on the LAN or exposed to the internet?
Yeah, the internet, port forwarded or UPnP or something along those lines.
I guess Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the architectures we've exposed or are planning on because the guys that are working on that are not in the call. But I imagine you would probably connect out from your LAN, so you wouldn't have to do any port opening. I mean, that's just as
So
a network
will the
type
hub
thing.
then relay the streams?
What's that?
Right. I think that's why it requires Hub V2. I think I don't think you're going to have to open a port for the camera hub,
Yeah.
but
So
that's why it requires Hub V2 to do that.
Right. The inbound would be through Hub V2, and the outbound for the video sending to the cloud, I imagine, would be a connect out. So you shouldn't have to change your router settings.
To be fair, it'll be exposed to the internet because you're connecting it to SmartThings, but not the same as say buying a FOSS cam off the shelf, opening the ports and configuring it on your router. I mean, that's not the experience we're hoping for. We need it to be more seamless than that, just to gain adoption amongst our customers.
Terry asked UPnP. Did you hear that?
Right. So some apps that need to reconfigure ports do it through a UPnP request to the router, but not a lot of routers have that enabled, or some routers don't have that enabled for security reasons.
Oh, actually changing the settings on your router via UPnP?
Right.
I don't think that's something that's on our roadmap by any means.
But I noticed I have a couple apps that tried to do that, and it seemed convenient, but I don't know if it's a security issue.
Right.
The assumption right now is the local hub V2 will be configured somehow to access the cameras locally, relay that video stream up to the cloud for the DVR service. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, for the most part, that sounds pretty architecturally right. We don't want anything to be a barrier for a normal consumer. Like most people don't actually know how to change anything in their router. So that ease of use is going to kind of drive a lot of those decisions.
Well, and just for storage.
That setup experience, I think, is what we're striving for, is plugging in a device, getting it access to your local area network, and then joining it to SmartThings. I don't think we're going for anything more than that.
Yeah, I mean, and just talking through this right now, it just makes me totally aware that the storage for these video clips is going to have to be, remotely. It'll have to be in the cloud. We just won't have the storage on the device.
4 gigabytes of storage?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on quite a few things, but we're not going to be storing a ton of video on the device.
Right. One question that did come up, and I don't know that we have the answer for, but is the premium service going to be required to view live streaming of a camera through the app? Has that been discussed amongst you guys at all? Yeah, I believe it will be, and then the ability to cache it or save it will be the premium part. But I don't know that for sure, and so those are some of the things that we have to work out in terms of what the product looks like.
I can just speak to the discussions I've had so far, and we're not interested in charging you for features that don't tax our infrastructure. So just the ability to stream video from your local area network is not the same as storing, dozens or hundreds of gigabytes of video and then streaming that back at any time. Those are two very different things. Yeah. And then you have things like NAS storage and the ability to store video locally, and that's certainly on our minds.
What about the simple app of doorbell, send image via email or something along those lines?
I'm not sure what that would imply in a premium service because it might cost something to do an email. I just don't know. If we would have a thing that would be a cost adder, but it's kind of coming back to what Tyler was saying. If it doesn't cost us something, we kind of take the strategy that we don't actually want to relay the cost back to the customer.
All right. Well, let me ask it in a different way. If there's local device storage, can we stream in a byte stream of an image and then relay that to an SMTP provider?
Good question. I have no idea.
It's not in there right now.
Good. It's good that we're recording this. We'll play it back for the video team.
I mean, we're talking about something that's about 3 lines of code. I don't know why it's taking this long to do such a simple thing of sending an image to my email.
I mean, the email infrastructure is not 3 lines of code, though. know.
Of course not, but there's plenty of third-party services. I mean, just type in your SMTP address for Gmail. It's not like you have to write an SMTP relay.
Right. All right. Email, another mechanism that we've wanted to add. I believe there is a story for email. It's bigger than, it is adding another service, and with that there might be costs. And so we're just trying to figure that out. And there hasn't been as many people asking for email as some of these other things.
Well, right, because we can't access the image or anything to send via email or MMS. I mean, that would be another route to go.
So handling the images better is part of our larger strategy, especially with Hub 2 coming out. There'll actually be a dedicated camera module on the dashboard, not just viewing it on the things page and then having a carousel. And I know that in several instances that's even broken, but there's going to be an app-wide functionality for cameras and managing your cameras. But email, yeah, I'd love to see email in there. I think that's a good idea.
All right. More DVR questions if we have them. Otherwise, there's incident management, and none of these names are finalized, but it's basically another premium service about managing specific incidents and escalating those.
And I know that Bob wants to speak to this one. Is that right, Bob?
I know more about that than I do about the video service.
Sure, give it a shot.
So was there a particular question or just desire for an overview?
This is just the overview part and just, what it is, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, so the working term was incident management. It's more like a kind of, a social connectivity to be able to allow, friends, neighbors, dog walkers, cleaning people or whatever, give them limited access for limited periods of time to your devices in your house for various reasons. And so, like the typical case might be you're on vacation, a water leak is detected. SmartThings tells you a water leak is detected, and if you have a valve that can automatically turn off, maybe you don't need to do anything else. But if you don't, you may want to escalate that to friends, family, whatever, and allow them to take action on your behalf. And so, part of this is kind of a notification system on steroids, where you can, define a list of people that will get notifications with, with a fallback if the first person doesn't respond, whatever. With the overall idea being able to, the system being able to take care of this incident in your absence, and then the availability via a link in a text message or email when we have that to have a web-based interface to provide very constrained access to your house, whatever you've defined in the incident. So if it's a water leak incident, you may want to allow people to to open the front door so they can come in the house and check on the water leak. There might be a button in that allows them to shut off a valve if that's appropriate, and other sorts of things like along those lines.
So what we were demoing at CES was specifically the water leak scenario. Say that a water leak happens and I'm not there to deal with it. It would automatically escalate that incident to a trusted circle that I've predefined. And what that trusted circle gets is if they don't have the SmartThings app, because we don't expect that everybody's going to download the SmartThings app, they'll receive a text message with a link. And that link is a one-time use authorization to access a predefined set of my SmartThings devices. So let's say I have a camera, a water valve, and a door lock. I can text, SmartThings can text my neighbor and say, there's been a problem at Tyler's house. Click here to view it. They can view the camera as I've allowed them to. They can unlock the door to get into my house as I've allowed them to. And if I had a valve, I could I could close that valve to deal with the issue. And then I can add a comment to that issue and say what happened, and then resolve the incident saying, hey, I've checked. It was a small leak. I've fixed it. No further problem. And when the incident's resolved, all of that access and authorization is no longer there, so that if they go to visit that link, they no longer have access to my camera, to my lock. And those aren't things that we've predefined. Those are things that are defined during the Smart App setup process. So you can choose, which people have access to what in your house. If it's a door being left open, a garage door being left open, or a water leak, or even like a smoke alarm going off or a carbon monoxide detector going off.
So I assume the delivery will be outside the app then, something web-based?
It's web-based and via a URL, and you get the same interface. One of the things that we're working on right now is the ability for the app to handle HTML5, so that you're not just constrained by what we want you to view. You can actually get an incredible degree of customization from the dashboard. So that's actually been a big thing for us. And when you open up the link in the text message or the push notification, it'll direct you to to your browser, onto our platform, and it'll look just like our app, but it'll just be in the browser with all those same controls. There was a bit of confusion during the announcement as to whether or not we were just rebranding our notification services. That's not the case. Incident management is actually an entirely different beast, and it's the ability to temporarily grant somebody who doesn't have SmartThings access to your system to help resolve an issue that's happened at your house. And what you consider an issue is variable on just what your needs are. It could be that your child didn't arrive home when you wanted them to arrive home. It could be that motion's been detected and you didn't expect motion to be detected. So we're using this example of a water leak because it's a fairly simple example to relay, but you define what a problem is, not us.
Right, and this will be something that we will have a number of modules coming out that make use of this, or a combination of new modules and extensions to existing ones. And it's also going to be something that's available to the Smart App developers to incorporate in their own apps.
So that leads to a question of, if you're going to have an HTML interface for this instance, will you have an HTML interface to replace the app for devices that don't have apps, i.e. like my Windows tablet that I currently have? Windows Pro, not a CE or limited edition type stuff.
So, I mean, there will be an HTML interface. I mean, we're rendering not exactly the same, but essentially the HTML interface inside of our app for the incident if you're viewing it yourself, and outside via web page for the user. If you have an integration to your tablet already to SmartThings, that would be included in those devices. But I'm not sure if I'm following the question.
It's still going to require a wrapper app at this time. We're not making a native HTML app for non-supported devices. Although it's something that we've talked about and could look at. Right now, we're sort of focusing on the HTML as tiles and display within the app.
All right, but what Tyler just described is the ability to log in my neighbor to a web page via a one-time link, render the devices in that web browser. Why couldn't we just take the same logical leap to say, hey, we can create an app that allows us to push out HTML and have that same access, so that I don't have to have the app installed. I can just have the computer I'm staring at right now turn on a light, because I don't know where my phone is right now.
I think it's on our roadmap. Maybe Bob can speak to that more. But
yeah, I mean, if what we're referring to is a web-based, like end-user web-based interface, that is something that's. I mean, we've been saying that's on the roadmap for a long time, but it's actually like in the same state now, and it's something that's actively being looked at to provide web-based access to control your devices. This is more constrained, and the external interface. Now, to some extent, if you're developing your own apps, you could probably take this pretty far down that path of providing general access. But what we plan to be releasing ourselves initially is going to be constrained to this kind of trusted circle of friends and limited access.
All right. All right. The other things on the agenda are any sort of update from CES from anyone who went or wanted to go, things that you saw coverage of that were interesting.
I'll start that. I saw some really cool color Zigbee bulbs from Sylvania, and I had a chance to talk with one of their engineers for a while, so we hope to bring those to SmartThings. They had some predefined settings so that you could adjust the color temperature, and they were much more accurate, I think, than accurate in color temperature than the Hue bulbs.
Accurate from bulb to bulb or accurate to a color emitter?
The way that he described it was accurate to the color temperature that they said that they were outputting. It was actually accurate to that. And they had their own bridge and their own app and everything, but the bulb itself, much nicer than the Hue bulb, in my opinion, in my 15 minutes testing it out.
Yeah, the Hue had consciously sacrificed certain color greens in order to have what they saw as better white. So I think it's to a color emitter is the.
Yeah, because what I've had a big problem with is the bulb to bulb color accuracy and trying to actually get a color. But you're talking to a former color engineer, so that's a whole separate conversation.
My standards are probably different than yours, but I'll say that I was impressed with them well over the Hue bulbs, and I think they were at a similar price point as well.
Yeah, I mean, if we start talking about Delta E's, we'll go down a completely different path. So.
Oh yeah, right. You can show me up on that for sure.
I'll get out my X-Rite and measure it.
I never, Jody's asking in here about the other camera integrations like Netgear, D-Link, FOSCAM. I know that Netgear and D-Link were mentioned by name, I believe, as getting integrated. The only one that we demoed at CES right now was it's Samsung TechWin, but it's actually not a Samsung company anymore. They sold it off. But those cameras are fairly nice. They looked pretty good. They were full HD on Ethernet, and yeah, they worked well. I got to see the Netgears, but we have some at our office. I saw Donald had one today. But yeah, nothing on the FOSCAM yet either, aside from me continuing to push on it as a priority, because I know that a number of people really want it. I think the main reason why it hasn't been a priority and we're prioritizing some of these other cameras over it is that the setup experience for FOSCAM is just not user-friendly. And I don't know, it's hard to roll that out as here's one of our preferred cameras. Give it a try.
So I had a chance to speak with one of our the project manager who's in charge of the camera stuff. He said it's likely we'll see the D-Link integration before we see the Netgear one. We don't have a list of cameras we expect to be compatible yet, but I'm working on that, and I hope that we, a month or more prior to us actually releasing the integration, that we can get you guys a list of cameras we expect to be compatible.
Along the lines of cameras, guys, I've been out for about a month, and I just got back in on this stuff here. But somewhere along the lines, my generic camera driver started working again. So I'm not sure what happened, but I'm actually seeing camera images from all of my test cameras. So.
Patrick, was that the issue with the output to S3 not working?
Yeah. So I know you guys got that fixed, and that seemed to make everything work again. So.
Yeah. I apologize it took so long, but we got that fixed, and I think that was the one blocker that was stopping the camera integrations from working.
The funny thing is,
when did that get fixed, Tyler?
That got fixed, I believe, about 3 weeks ago. I could look at
actually. You know what it was the not writing to the DNI, not being able to.
Yeah.
That's what made the camera start working again. Yeah,
those were, I guess, two separate issues, and the device identifier issue was fixed more recently than the output to S3 issue. So I know that I had emailed you saying that the S3 issue was fixed, but the device network ID issue was fixed just prior to the New Year's.
Yeah, and that's when I noticed that it started working again.
Yeah, great.
As well as every other app that I had that depended on that. So
all of them.
Kind of gave up for a while there, but whoever found that, kudos to them and thanks for fixing that.
Yeah, I think that was even Todd, who's here with us.
And we, bringing up a good point that we need to broadcast things like that and talk about them more. We were just talking about that today and our need to over communicate, or actually communicate, but in our eyes over communicate these sorts of things, even if it's new documentation that gets written or something that gets fixed or whatever. We need to figure out a good way of disseminating that information routinely.
Yeah, and I can do a better job of that too, but I've just been busy with other projects here, and when it doesn't work for 3 months, you kind of give up on some things.
That's what we like to do. We like to just wear people down until they're just like, totally so sad about it.
We just got to be patient,
I'm going to start another thread on the community.
Oh yeah, you mean like the once every other week thread that everything is the worst?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This dang free stuff's not working again.
It's not about
upcoming.
I mean, it could be helped if it was just a consistent communication, because today there were several people posted emails that they were getting a new firmware, and I believe it was Tyler jumped on the message board to say that we were going to get some kind of blog update about a firmware. There's nothing on the blog yet. There's nothing on the message boards. There's 3 or 4 different people copied and pasted the contents of their emails back to the message board, and who knows.
So we have a firmware update that's rolling out over the course of the next week and a half or so. We're doing a complete update across the platform. There are several fixes. Actually, Doug might be able to speak to a couple of them, but we want to start doing do a better job of consistent release notes. Up to this point, when we have an Android update or a Windows Phone update or an iOS update, it's pretty ad hoc with me grabbing the release notes and just posting them on the forums. So this is going to be the start of a more official process where you can expect release notes on the blog. However, we did start rolling out the updates before doing that. So you're right in the sense that people have been receiving the updates without the release notes being posted yet, but those will be posted. I absolutely promise that. I don't know when, but it needs to be before all these updates roll out. So in the next week and a half or 2 weeks, you'll see that blog post that'll have full release notes, not just the little snippets that we've been sending people who ask via email. And I think even our CTO, Jeff, is going to be on there commenting on some of the updates that have happened since the last major firmware update.
What about just like a abbreviated version of the release notes on the community site?
It's already there. I regret that it wasn't posted by us, but it was somebody had emailed us asking what the changes were, and we sent them again that abbreviated version of the changes, and they had posted that. Doug here might be able to comment on some of the changes, but there were a couple security fixes, as well as like Z-Wave replace was in the most recent firmware update, and that's something that's in the Z-Wave spec that up to this point we hadn't actually had in the app and on the firmware. Any comments on that?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more tight for what actually goes between the cloud and the hub, a lot smaller. And I mean, it's a huge change, but it should look mostly the same as far as feature set beyond like the things that are mentioned in that abbreviated list.
Yeah, a lot of these fixes aren't sexy fixes that you'll notice in the app immediately, but they make a big difference in terms of performance of on our cloud infrastructure, or features like being able to replace a Z-Wave device that's being used by 20 smart apps without removing it manually from each smart app, and then adding it back in and then reconfiguring all those smart apps. That's a big one for people who need to replace a device.
I found an issue with this new release today. It doesn't consistently go into pairing mode. I'm going to try it on my other hub before I file a bug, but right now I'm having to unplug and replug in the hub to get it back into a second or third pairing sequence.
Todd, is that happening right now? I don't think any of the changes that we made in the last week or so would have affected that, but we can definitely get somebody looking. Okay, yeah, all right.
All right, see the hub?
Yeah.
Let me get it. The little light does not blink when I press the button.
Are you on we can take a support session elsewhere, but if you're on Wi-Fi, turn Wi-Fi off and try again. But if you continue to run into issues, let me know. Send me an email and we'll
turn Wi-Fi off. What?
On your phone. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If you're having an issue on your local network, it could be preventing the hub from receiving the command to go into join mode. let's take this off the call and we can figure out what's going on.
That's too bad because I have no cell service where I live. But anyway, that's all right.
Okay, we'll talk, Todd. All right.
Yeah, we'll talk. I don't want to go off the HTML conference. Sorry, Patrick.
Oh, Z-Wave. A question about Z-Wave Plus on the new hub. That's the Gen 5 Z-Wave chip.
Yeah, so we need to do certification in Z-Wave to do everything, but we're planning on doing the new thing about
Couldn't hear him.
Yeah.
Move the camera. There you go.
No, I was asking if Z-Wave Plus was in the new firmware update, because I have some Gen 5 devices coming from Aon.
I can speak to this.
Z-Wave Plus on the hub itself is not a requirement to work with Z-Wave Plus devices.
Tyler.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, Duncan. Oh yeah, Duncan, room with that. You got it, dude.
Yeah, the Z-Wave, the new like Gen 5 devices, those, it's not Z-Wave Plus or the 500 series that is the reason they're not working. They're just new and they use different commands, and they're just have slightly different firmware. So we just haven't gotten all of those supported yet. Submitted a fix for the test sensor, and the siren is working. The meter, I don't think anyone has fixed yet, but yeah, it's not the Z-Wave Plus is the reason. It's just they made other changes for the Aon ones. They added security to all the devices, and not all of our device types expect the devices to require secure encapsulation for their commands. So that's the reason the Aon ones haven't been working. But we are going to the Z-Wave Plus certification process right now, so we can't actually technically support Z-Wave Plus yet until we get the okay from the Z-Wave company in the alliance. So once that is done, which has been done by some stuff like our application to become principal members of the Z-Wave Alliance and all this random stuff. So once that gets done, we'll update all the hubs to Z-Wave Plus, and Hub V2 will be Z-Wave Plus from the beginning. But that's not, Z-Wave Plus is completely backwards compatible, so there should be no barrier to getting those new Gen 5 devices or other Z-Wave Plus devices working on our system before that, other than just some various incidental problems and bugs that have interfered with that so far. So, but I could answer other questions about Z-Wave Plus if anyone has them.
Looks like there's a question in chat about if Hub 1 will be able to be Z-Wave Plus certified and why that would matter, Duncan.
Yeah, we're going to be updating Hub 1 to Z-Wave Plus via firmware update. So, yeah, that'll have everything that the new hubs that we're shipping out as Z-Wave Plus will.
You may not be able to answer this, but is there an end of life statement for Hub V1, or will there be a plan to sell both Hub V1 and V2?
We are not planning on selling Hub V1 and V2 simultaneously. I don't know if that only answers like a part of your question, but I don't have the other answer.
So to that point, we're looking at a variety of migration paths. What makes sense for people who have a Hub V1 and purchase a Hub V2? It was mentioned earlier on the call, one of the options there might be using your first generation hub as a second, repeater on the network for Z-Wave and Zigbee, even a LAN connected repeater if it's off of the main network. So there's still several other options there, and we definitely don't expect your first hub to become useless. We want it to be as useful as possible.
So I got the $1 million question here. Ben, you ready?
Is this?
You ready?
Is this about Kickstarter backers or existing backers and updating?
No. This has to do with, so you're going to launch Hub V2 in April. Looking at a calendar, that's about 120 days or less away, depending on what you define as April. Will there be any opportunity for us folks in the development community here to have access to one prior to launch so we can help work out the kinks to make the launch successful?
Well, I mean, it's a good thought, and it's something that we should try to do. I don't know, logistically how it'll work if we're going to be able to provide that in April or prior to April. We already have had requests for like, how are we going to deal with Bluetooth on the Hub V2? Do you have any documentation around the Bluetooth that you've got in there? And we obviously should be getting that so people can start developing solutions for it, but no plans yet. That'll be something that we'll have to just plan for and prioritize as a desire in the coming weeks, so that we are out in front of that and have a beta group of testers who I'm assuming everyone on these calls would love to be in the beta group of testers. So yeah, I mean, no, that was a good question, and it's something that we should do. We try to beta everything internally, but you guys are even better at finding things than us. So
yeah, I think that one has my name on it if I look close.
Doug can probably attest. You don't want any of these.
It doesn't. No, but on the bottom of it, does it say Pat or Pat Pending? That's my middle name.
Nope. Yeah, unless your initials are FCC, it doesn't have your name on it, unfortunately.
Soon to be. I'll be filing the paperwork.
Classic number 7.
Yeah, well, I can 3D print a mock-up too.
So, I have a 50-cent question. Is that okay?
As long as it's about the wrapper.
50 cent. The question, I know we're on hardware and all about that, and I kind of want to go off on a tangent, is now that you guys are all back from CES, you're well rested, all your marbles are back in place, are you going to chew through the devices that are sitting in the queue?
Yeah, I mean, I want to even like announce more things about that, but I'm very confident that we're going to be getting much more speed and transparency in the device certification realm. I think that there's going to be updates periodically and just chewing through that backlog, like you were saying. I even want to publish that backlog and say, here's all the devices that are in the coming like 2 months or whatever, so you guys can see it too. So that's the plan.
Yeah, we have some big changes coming soon, so that'll be good.
You cloning Tyler's and Donald's? God forbid.
Lutron.
Is
that the Zigbee remote, Todd?
What's that?
Is that the Zigbee Lutron remote?
I believe so.
Nice.
That's how I found out my hub wasn't going into pair mode.
Yeah.
Jody, GitHub integration is on me and Bob are pushing that directly very soon. That's been almost done for like 7 months or something like that. And so we definitely want to get that fully out there. And Todd, keep going on that Lutron stuff. My whole house is waiting for it.
Oh, it's not compatible with the old Maestro stuff, dude. I'm sorry.
I'm not Maestro.
Oh, what do you have? The cassettes?
RH2.
Oh, yeah, you have to have a bridge for that.
Man.
Do we have any questions?
I didn't hear you. Point the camera at you.
Never mind. I know there's a blog about Major's hats.
So, real quick question back to the Bluetooth on Hub V2. Will that just be LE only? Or will that be a full Bluetooth stack?
We've been talking about BLE specifically. I don't know
I'd have to go back and check if we can put a full stack on there. I don't know that we would support speakers or some of the higher bandwidth things out of the box, but I feel like, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things I would love buttons and remotes for. Anybody? Oh man.
So we have also talked about the Bluetooth meshing standard that's emerging. We are looking at adding that, right?
Yeah, the new, what is it, 4.2 Bluetooth has a mesh in it instead of the proprietary CSR mesh that a lot of people have been implementing.
Are we going to?
I think we could do whatever our stack allows, and it should allow 4.2. So, I mean, there's no reason not to.
Right. I mean, I for one see Bluetooth and a mesh Bluetooth as a way to resolve many people's presence detection issues. Having things be a smaller radius and more contained, and potentially even like directional and things like that. So I'm not alone in that either, because Alex is like super keen on it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah, Jody, beacons is obviously one example. We demoed some beacons at CES, and even I think we'll be doing a lot more with those.
I also want to throw out NFC. We demoed NFC at CES, the ability to write a SmartThings URL to a NFC tag and have that trigger some sort of action via a smart app.
Ben, you've been working out? What's going on there? Yeah, I'm on mute.
All right. Well, I didn't have anything. Well, Tyler didn't have anything else on the agenda aside from some upcoming IDE improvements, which I'm not actually sure we have anyone on that can speak to fully. I know Bob has been talking, but
is Ryan Applegate by any chance? Because he said he would join.
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ryan, how about you talk about that a little?
Yeah, so recently we've pushed out, as Ben said, quite a few improvements. Actually, recently, in the last few days, to my smart apps to speed up the loading of that, as well as currently in progress. We haven't released it yet, but probably next week. There's a big effort for performance around smart app and device type simulation. So right now, being able to load the app in the editor, hit set location, and install is horribly slow, and we've been known that's really been a problem with our app and device type developers for a long time, and you're going to be noticing huge improvements for speedups in that area. So that we'll be rolling that out soon. So we've kind of recently went over a lot of slowness in the IDE like overall, and been making huge gains for performance in that area. And so we'll be hopefully rolling that out next week, and then we'll try to do a blog post or put some notes in the community and try to get feedback around that, and then tackle whatever slowness after that we can. So does anyone have any specific questions around IDE performance or other areas that pain points that people have that we should look to focus on next? I know simulating was the big one, and that's going to be coming soon. You just won't see that just yet.
Since it's probably just a real simple HTML fix, even CSS, is there any way we can get 2 rows of devices and not have to scroll all the way through configured devices?
Yeah, Ben and I have talked about that before. I don't know if you want to speak on that, Ben.
I mean, there's really this like two paths that we should take within what's currently known as the IDE or developer tools. One is more about account management, and one is more about developing new devices and smart apps. I think those two should be separated, and I think that as part of your point about a web interface for things, I think that has to be in the web interface and has to be much better. And then I think the developer tools sort of split from that. That's an easy example where we might be able to do that in the meantime, but it might not make it in as like the final product. Definitely keep those sorts of like quick fix improvements coming because we have the bandwidth to affect some of those things today.
I mean, it's one CSS.
Right.
So, I mean, I inject it just so I can see a list when I'm working on bigger lines. So, but yeah, no, I mean, if the HTML thing, of rendering the app truly in a browser is coming around, you guys have a Windows mobile app, right? Correct now?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody with a Windows mobile, but any reason why it's not in the Windows Store as a Metro app for desktops then?
So I can speak to that if nobody else want to jump in. So we had a Windows Universal app at one point. We scaled back a little bit to make sure that the phone experience was solid. I don't have a timeline for a Windows desktop app using their Universal app system, but it's certainly something that we're aware of. At the same time, though, I also think that a browser experience would be a better first shot than having a dedicated Windows 8/Windows 10 application. So you'll see a desktop experience from us. I just can't say whether or not the first one will be a Windows app.
Okay.
And getting richer. He wants to buy a proper house, with an estate. He says after the war, the market will be flooded and we can take our pick. We can dance on the grave of the fallen family.
Josh, looks like your audio's coming through.
That means Matthew. That's done now, Granny.
Okay, we can stop the edit now.
You guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was a microphone in the other room. Is there a way to easily hide the sidebar in the IDE?
Sidebar? You mean the right sidebar?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Firebug, it's one line of CSS.
I know, and that's what I do every time is I open up the console and hide it.
I've actually been experimenting with the full screen editor. We just haven't dug much more into that, but if people really want to see that, we could try to spend some time on making that happen. So you'd have shortcut keys to basically go full screen in the code, and then when you simulate, you could bring the sidebar back out to see the tiles.
I haven't looked yet. Is Word Wrap in yet?
I haven't looked either. I know it was in there. We should make Brad be on the call next time.
Did you see what I just posted about in the sim? You know how you when you pick a device to use in your simulation, then you go and you do an edit, and then you save and republish, or save, and then when you jump over, you have to repick the device again to say I want to sim with it. It's because it unselects it during the save operation. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I think related to that, whenever you save a smart app, it always scrolls back up to the top, which is really annoying when you're trying to debug something, especially for HTTP endpoints. I'm testing on one side and then it save it, and then it scrolls back up and scroll back down.
There's a bug that's been entered for that, and I actually thought that was in the fix recently, but we'll look at that.
It's actually, I think you guys keep compiling it back in there. It goes away for a couple builds and then it comes back.
Yeah, I think there might be a merge issue.
Yeah. But Tyler says I'm just seeing things, right, Tyler?
Yeah, that too. But no, that's an issue for sure.
Yeah. No, it's just small stuff like that, though. When you are doing a fast little edits and trying to jump back and forth, those are the things that just drive you nuts. Those little bitty things that you do over and over again for troubleshooting and cleaning up your code.
Yeah, if you think you do it a lot, our engineering team does it, 5 times more. So now that we have a ton of resources to get these fixed, we'll be rolling out changes quickly, I think.
Ton of resources. Wow.
Ton of resources.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna bust off here. Good seeing everybody. Good talking to you. And Tyler, I'll see if I can get my other hub to do the same thing.
Yeah, I just emailed you, Todd. So let's talk about that.
Okay. We'll talk later. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined late, so I might have missed it, but did we cover the issue related to the arguments property of command class still being an empty list?
I don't think so.
That's you, Ryan.
What's that?
I think that's Ryan's question, probably Ryan or Bob.
Yeah, is there a community post around that? I guess I didn't know that was an issue, but I can dig into that.
Yeah, I posted it on the developer call. I can message it to you if you want.
Josh, it's been that way since the big Amazon or the big changeover back in November.
Yeah, post the link here to a community thread, and we'll take a look.
Yeah, I'll dig into it. Thanks.
And I also might have missed it as well, but did we talk a bit about smart apps with HTTP endpoints running locally on the new hub v2?
Yeah, we did talk about that, but we don't have a definitive answer. We're going to need to get back to you on that.
Okay.
All right. Well, I know this is going to be recorded. You can kind of go back if you missed some of them. We are a little over tonight, but it was a lot of discussion. If anyone's got any parting things, do those now. All right.
This is the shout out section.
Yeah, the shout out thing. Like I said before, Alex is going to join one of these upcoming calls. We'll talk about that and message it on the forums and whatnot when that's going to happen.
Hey, I just want to give a little shout out to your document developer. What's his name? Jim. I went back and read all the documentation, trying to play a newbie just getting started with it. Huge improvement from 6 months ago. So making good strides there.
Nice.
Not quite done yet.
Well, I mean, because when he finishes it, we're just going to fire him. So I mean,
I don't have good ones.
You're done.
One word at a time.
Just going to delete it and have them write it again. Yeah. I wouldn't call it a shout out, but as always, if you have an issue that you're encountering, please email support@smartthings.com. I'll call it a shout out to my team here. We are a hardworking group of 7 individuals who just want to make sure that you're happy in life. So, we obviously want you to post your feedback on the forums, but we also want to make sure that it gets addressed through the proper channels. So if you have an issue, please, even if you've encountered the issue before, email us. We'll do our best to work through it and help you out. Yes, and my colleague Ryan will make food for you if you're unhappy from the support ticket.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. This has been a good discussion, good call. All right. Break.
Everybody.